Today, the topic I want to share with you is actually quite controversial. The core of it is why I am increasingly advising against some small and medium sellers, or those who don't have much strength, from getting into Amazon, especially at this particular point in time. When I saw that some top Amazon sellers are processing nearly 100,000 orders a day with a profit of almost 15 renminbi per order, I felt that more and more of the living space has already been squeezed out by these super sellers. So the story goes like this. First of all, we all know that Amazon has already passed its golden period of opportunity. In other words, the days when you could just casually list some products and make sales by running some ads are over. That's why there are now more and more Amazon service providers and training courses appearing on the market. When an industry starts to have more and more people teaching you how to make money, it means that the underlying business logic has already changed. At the very beginning, when these people were quietly making a fortune, diving into the industry and silently earning some of the early profits, that was a time when few people noticed them. So back in 2008 or in the early 2010s, who seriously told Guoding or who was loudly promoting on social media how much money they made on Amazon? Actually, at that time, everyone was quietly making money in silence. It was only after competition reached this intense, white-hot stage that things changed. Wow, so many people jumped out. Amazon training courses, 2 days and 3 nights for 10,000 yuan, 9,900, 8,800, 6,600, right? There were so many people saying, I have this kind of service system, right? Some even started selling accounts. At this point, the logic has definitely changed. This rule applies to any industry. So just how fierce is the competition on Amazon? Next, I'll share a true story that happened around me, which I think can inspire everyone. You might be thinking, oh no, isn't Amazon all about product selection? Isn't it just about who is faster and more skilled, whose supply chain is more efficient? There aren't really any brands on Amazon, so isn't it just about whose images get more clicks, whose A+ pages are better, and whose ads perform better? But if you really think about it, what is the real competition here? In fact, it all comes down to one thing: supply chain efficiency, or to put it simply, just one word: efficiency. At this point, at this stage, many companies have already gone through 5 or 10 years of systematic operations. They have even perfected how to create every single image. They have SOPs for how to train new employees, how to assess performance, and how to maximize people's efficiency throughout the process. I've even seen many companies use AI to increase their Amazon efficiency by 2 or 3 times, if not more. So when it comes to this year's peak season, many companies' ordinary listings have long since disappeared. The listings that have risen this year are those that rely on AI and improved operational efficiency. These have already shown tremendous explosive growth. At the same time, you might think, there are still many opportunities on Amazon, so why not go after the long tail? Well, here comes the core strategy for targeting the long tail. There is such a company, or rather, there are many such companies. I know of at least 6 or 7 such companies, each with more than 3,000 to 5,000 employees. In fact, they've even poached all the HR staff from an entire region. Why? Because they've already established and completed a logic for mass product listing. What we mean by product listing isn't the traditional kind you might be familiar with. The concept of product listing you have in your mind is from 5 years ago. Today's product listing focuses on efficiency and on leveraging long-tail keyword mining. Let me give you an example so you can understand the logic behind this. According to Google's statistics, every year on Google, 30% of the global traffic comes from the emergence and growth of new demands. In other words, these are keywords that have never appeared before. As times change and evolve, these new keywords emerge. For example, as we travel more and more, suitcases are used more frequently, and we hope that the wheels on our suitcases are silent. So there's now a silicone cover for the suitcase wheels. This has become a hard requirement. Such a hard requirement might not even be considered a hot product on Amazon, nor does it reach the scale of a bestseller. But when items like this accumulate, maybe you get 3 to 5 orders a day that big sellers don't even notice, right? Big sellers don't want to bother with these small, complicated things. You quietly stock up on this kind of inventory yourself, right? If you have 100 such listings, you could accumulate 500 orders a day. But this really tests your insight into new demands in the business world. In the end, who can actually accumulate these orders depends on probability. It's impossible for every single one to succeed. So in the end, what are these companies really competing on? What they're competing on is ultimately about maximizing each person's efficiency to the extreme, just like Amway or some marketing companies do. So they rent out an entire floor, and out of their 500 employees, 25 people are dedicated solely to HR-driven operations. Right? They conduct performance evaluations on the same day, and on that entire floor, they only have 2 restrooms and a few seats. Their lights are always 20% brighter than others, and their air conditioning is always set 2 degrees lower than elsewhere, all to keep you from dozing off and to boost your efficiency. So people who are truly determined to make money throw themselves into it with everything they've got, and they will definitely achieve good results in a company like this. That's why their internship salary is already 8,000 yuan, and once they become full-time, it jumps to 32,000. The purpose is to see if you truly have this kind of potential. So, the old approach was to train 3 out of 10 people and keep 2. Now, these companies hire 50 people, right? But in the end, maybe only 3 to 5 are kept. That's why these companies have so many people. This is also a core reason why their efficiency is so high. So think about it yourself. Can your team's operational efficiency really compete with these companies? So when I saw that the truly big companies had already completely taken over the major rankings, the big listings, and the main sales systems, right? They rely on the supply chain and financial capabilities they've accumulated over the years and on the overall improvement of their operational efficiency. At the same time, I also saw that these massive companies doing long tail distribution have already almost completely mined all the available demand. So what kind of space is actually left for us small and medium sellers, for those of you without any supply chain advantages, for those of you coming from a factory background? So when you open up Amazon again, wanting to get into Amazon, when you hear those wonderful stories about how a single successful listing saved a factory or revived a company, you really need to think about what your entry point is. All right, that's all for today's sharing.